First of all, I want to echo what Todd said. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for setting this up. Thank you. I want to thank all the people that showed up tonight. I realize it's Packer Victory Night up in Lambeau, so you guys are having a sacrifice to come here. So thank you for taking the time. Obviously, I'm Vinnie Pheng, and I'm running for the seat here on the West Bend School Board. I've been living in West Bend since 1999. I am married and have 2 children. What prompted me to run for office here is I'm just a regular guy. I go to these board meetings, and I listen to all these people, and sometimes I feel like the voice of the regular guy gets steamrolled. My colleague here, Rick, mentioned that we have some challenges facing. He's right. We got some serious financial challenges coming up. And the people that got us here are the same people that keep telling us we need to tax more. Well, the last 3 years, the tax rate has been increased. It doesn't take the brains of an archbishop to figure out that that's not sustainable. The burden on the taxpayer is going to be prohibitive. And what is the solution? Well, the solution from the people that got us here is tax more. It's a vicious circle. Now, I spent 10 years in the military, so I know a little bit about government service, so I know a little bit about budgeting and waste and all that good stuff. But I can also add, and when you spend more than you take in, you're going to have a problem. I'm not going to shirk from those tough decisions, and I ask for your support to put me on the school board. Thank you.
Could you all tell us what is the #1 tangible idea or attribute you bring to the school board, and then also let us know how you think that will benefit the group and the school district?
As I mentioned in my opening statement, I'm a taxpayer. And what I bring is the voice from the ranks. Now, some of you might have read the article in the newspaper where I talked about the budget is like a backpack. In the Army, we call it a rucksack. And lately, instead of making that rucksack smaller, we've been making it bigger. And we keep shoving more stuff into it. And you know who carries that backpack? The taxpayer. So we have a choice. We can make that backpack bigger and make the taxpayer suffer, or we can restrict the size of that backpack and really take a close look at what needs to go in it. I've had boots on the ground. I know what it feels like to carry a rucksack that weighs more than I do. And you know how that happened? Because somebody in some lofty tower said, hey, we need X because it might happen. And I'll give you an example. I went to a school, and in the German army, at one time, everybody had to carry an axe just because they might run across a door. Well, if we have that sort of thinking, how big is that rucksack going to be? You make the rucksack small, you think about what you need to put into it, and you put in what the military calls mission essential. And I carry that rucksack in the military. I carry that tax burden as a taxpayer, and that's what I bring.
First of all, God bless you, Vinnie, for your service to the country, but what the heck are we sticking into the backpack that doesn't have to be there?
Am I on? That's a good question, Bob. Here's where I'm coming from. I understand that the issues are very complex and that we're mandated by the state to provide quite a number of things. I think the comment was made at one of these board meetings that Madison has a lot of involvement in what goes on here. My job would be, as a member of the board, to practice good oversight. What does that mean? Good oversight means you don't get into the nitty-gritty. You give somebody a budget, you stick to it, and then you make them keep going back and forth until their proposal meets your budget.
But what if that's impossible due to mandates and due to state restrictions and due to the fact that 86% of the budget you have absolutely no control over because of employee costs?
That is correct. You're right. 80% of the budget is
86%.
86% is quote-unquote untouchable. And that's where we need to think outside the box. My colleague, Mark, mentioned the charter school. I think that's a great way to think outside the box, to bring additional ideas where we can reduce those costs. Now, maybe we need to go down the budget line item by line item. Maybe we need to do a broad 10% cut in all areas. And I will promise that I will sit down and do the heavy lifting, do the due diligence, go down the budget line item by line item, and see what we can come up with. But you're right, at the end of the day, there are mandates and there are unfounded mandates. I understand that. And that's why we are at a crisis and we have tough decisions.
Heard a lot about tax and spend. We've heard a lot about a school board that's out of control. Everybody likes to hear that people are spending too much money. But there's nobody out there, there's no taxpayer that wants to hear that the budget is unlimited. Everybody likes to hear that we're going to spend less money. We're going to get this board under control. Everything is out of control right now. We're hearing that. Everybody says that in general terms. That doesn't mean a thing. I want specific examples from each of you. You're running for the office. By now, you should have investigated at least some of that. And I'm not talking about, I'd want to hear about combining the high schools. That'll be a separate question, probably from someone else.
Bob, again, as I said earlier, that's a good question. But let me backtrack a little bit. In my opening statement, I asked, how do we get here? Why do we have all these mandates? Well, when I looked into it, it's because we listened to the quote-unquote experts. So maybe we need to go back to those quote-unquote experts in Madison and say, hey, do we really need to do this? But to answer your question more directly, at this past year's budget meeting, there was great fuss and great talk about a $600,000 cut. But then what we discovered was we turned around and spent those $600,000 because there was an agreement that on these jobs that were going to be cut, that if the district accepted a pay freeze, we'd turn around and spend that money. So my question is, if the decision was made that these positions weren't that necessary, that's an easy one right there. The question is, should we combine the high schools? I'm not a long-time West Bend resident. I did not grow up here. I didn't have my kids go to school here. I didn't go to school here. So for me, it's less of an emotional decision. If I present myself as a physical conservative, and right now, based on what I know, as a fiscal conservative, I cannot support 2 high schools. So if I had to vote now, this second, push comes to shove, I would say yes, let's go to 1 high school. And I would say this, it's been explained to me by, very passionately I might add, because Rick is right, there's a very strong feeling in this community about the 2 high schools. It's been explained to me that's for athletic purposes to have twice as many opportunities. Or you know what, let's stop and think about that. What are we really teaching our kids? Are we teaching our kids that we're going to have 1 really excellent team? Or we're going to have 2 mediocre teams? And that's where I'm coming from.